For the second time this week, we have listened to an account of the passion and death of Jesus Christ. And the account that we have just read is written by John the Evangelist, one of the few who remained with Jesus until he died on the cross. And he is actually mentioned there in the Gospel, standing with Mary, the mother of Jesus. So it is therefore an eyewitness account of one of the most grueling and unjust executions in human history. It's very hard for us today to comprehend just how ignominious and embarrassing his death was for the followers of Jesus Christ. It was only the lowest of the low, the nastiest of criminals and traitors, who were hung to die on a cross of wood in a public place. As he hung on the cross, the Romans decided to make fun of Jesus by putting up a sign calling him the King of the Jews, knowing that where he hung and how he was dying was about as far away from royalty as one could get. To be condemned to such a death was more than just the pain and the suffering that was involved. It was also about shame and degradation. Even after Jesus' resurrection, early Christians took their time to recognize the importance of the cross. Today it is the widely recognized symbol of the Christian church. But in the early days, followers of Christ chose the fish as the symbol of the church, rather than adopting this gruesome implement of torture. The account of Jesus' death always leaves us with the question, why should such a good man have been put to death in such an awful way? Surely if he only spoke about peace and love and forgiveness, he might have been dismissed as eccentric, but he wouldn't be seen as any sort of threat to those who were in power. The truth is that Jesus turned the accepted order of the world upside down. He was a rebel who spoke of a kingdom where the last would be first, where the poor would inherit the earth, where the barriers between people would be pulled down for good. It irritated the powerful, the intelligent, the crafty political minds of those who controlled human society for their own benefit. And Christianity can still have the same effect on the rich and the powerful today. That is why they want to try to banish it. That is why they want to try to control it. The Christian message is a huge obstacle to those who want to use the world, its resources, and its people for their own benefit, to increase their own influence or to line their own pockets. Many of them despise change and don't want to upset an unjust world so that they will be able to maintain the status quo. Jesus was crucified by those who preferred to keep things the way that they were and to play the system for what it was worth. The same people would threaten his life if he walked the earth this day. As we listen to the narrative of Jesus' passion, we have to constantly ask ourselves, how would we have responded to Jesus Christ? We always like to think that we would have stood by him right to the end. But remember that there were thousands of people on the mountainside to eat their fill of loaves and fishes, but only 3 stood at the foot of his cross just a few months later. Would we have been any different? Jesus is present today in the marginalized, in the migrant, in the 4 billion poor who inhabit our earth, in the homeless and the addict. The question is, how far will any one of us get in society if we genuinely defend their cause or fight for justice? In many parts of the world, people pay for their concern with their lives, and Jesus is crucified over and over again in the oppressed and the neglected. This truth is very well captured in a poem by Geoffrey Stoddart Kennedy called Indifference, which was written over 100 years ago. And I quote, "When Jesus came to Birmingham, they simply passed him by. They would not hurt a hair on him, they only let him die. For men had grown more tender, and they would not give him pain. They only just passed down the street and left him in the rain. Still Jesus cried, 'Forgive them, for they know not what they do.' And still it rained the winter rain that drenched him through and through. The crowds went home and left the streets without a soul to see, and Jesus crouched against a wall and cried for Calvary." This day of remembrance, Good Friday, is not a day for clapping ourselves on the back for believing in a crucified Christ. It is a day to burst the bubble of our pride. And please God, may it be a day as well to help us to think about our own shortcomings and our failures in quiet sorrow and in silent reflection.